Welcome to The Sacred Journey. The Sacred Journey is the program that reminds you that life is a wonderful adventure, and each and every experience we have is a unique and perfect opportunity for learning. Today's program is a casual conversation about Freemasonry. I've been wanting to do this show for a long time, but I wasn't sure to whom I should go to get some accurate information. So I am so honored to have my dear friend, Devin Grandchamp, whom I have known since before he was born. His grandparents were like second parents to me, and I consider Devin my adopted nephew. So welcome, Devin. I'm delighted that you're able to join us, and so few people are intrigued or curious about Freemasonry and know nothing about it. And I'm going to give you free rein and try not to interrupt much, but I will be once in a while having to ask a question, make a comment, but the general population doesn't know enough, including myself, to ask questions. So I'm leaving it up to you to know what it's okay to share, what's not, why it is, why it isn't. Ball's in your court.
Thank you. I think it's best to start off with that everyone's journey into Freemasonry is very unique, much like my own, and how they find the fraternity is because they're all yearning for something different. And for me, that journey started while I was in college, and I was introduced to the generality, I would say, of Freemasonry by my college advisor and professor, one of the kindest, gentlest men I ever knew. And while I had heard about Freemasonry before, he was the one who first broke it down for me. And while I didn't join the fraternity at the time, I ended up finding my way up to Vermont for work and ended up joining my local lodge up here. But it was really through knowing that person and understanding the life he had led to say, yes, there's a greater thing to be had here. And being in a new area too, certainly wanted to get to know folks and ended up petitioning my local Masonic lodge, which my brother was a member of. And I was accepted and eventually became a member myself. So that brought me into the fraternity, of which I've been a member going on about 10 years now. And it's a very diverse community, linking well over 1 million members around the world, if not more. I don't certainly know the exact number myself, but Freemasonry can be found in almost every country around the world in some way, shape, or form. Specifically, it's very strong in North America, but also as well as in Europe, existing across the Pacific Ocean, into Africa, Asia, and other places as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that I have known many Freemasons, and some of the commonalities I notice, they're all men of integrity and compassion, men who have earned respect and who offer respect. And I noticed those things about all the men that I know in this group. And I will ask you, is it a religion? Is it a civic group? How would you classify or describe it?
It is certainly not a religion. Freemasonry describes itself as celebration of the religious. We do require of our members to have a belief in God. That certainly can be any God. We are not specific to a particular religion. But it also does serve a number of purposes. It's multifaceted. It serves the individual as well as the general public as well. Freemasonry has a lot of parent causes that it donates to. Sometimes particular to the particular Grand Lodge in which you are would donate to specific funds. Like in Vermont, we do a CARE program, which focuses a lot on education and teacher development. Educational development, leadership in that capacity is our focus. There's other institutions such as the York Rite of Freemasonry, which does a lot with eye research. So it really varies. And the Scottish Rite, for example, does a lot with dyslexia research. The Shriners, which is a Masonic organization, runs free healthcare for children. So there's a lot of things as well within the organizations that donate and contribute time and money to, as well as the individual, where charity is certainly encouraged in our private capacity, in which several members are devoted to local causes as well. So Freemasonry just seems to be kind of that focus of which can serve both ourselves and our fellow man as well.
Okay, I didn't know the Shriners was part of Freemasonry. I think many people probably do not. At the end of our show, we will share a website that you offered to us that anyone who wants to learn more about it. And you made it very clear that you'd be willing to speak, to share your own personal experience, but not being considered speaking on behalf of Freemasons. So we do want to say that this is about your personal experience. Now, you said that you've been a Freemason for 10 years. Is there anything about that journey that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have to say, up there with some of the most profound and amazing decisions I have ever made in my life. We think of things of rites of passage, such as college, high school graduation, taking that first job that we're right out of school, or completing a journey. But for me, Freemasonry was, as I said, trying to find a little bit more about my local community, as well as wanting to better myself. And when I joined the lodge, I had instantaneous friends around the country. I've met Masons everywhere, but I have learned a lot in that 10 years, grown personally. A lot of skills, I would say, has been honed through my connections with different people, learning from them and them learning through me, as well as just the opportunity to better myself. And when I say better myself, I think one of the most common questions you get asked is, what is Freemasonry in a context? And that's a very broad question. I both love and hate the phrase when it comes down to being Freemasonry is taking a good man and making him a better man. I think it both encapsulates what we do, but it really defines for the individual what that actually means. And as a public facing statement that many Masons use, it's a very personal one. I can say that Freemasonry has bettered me and has certainly improved me through a lot of things, through that association with like-minded, progressive, and good-natured men. If you think about the Masonic Lodge in itself, that's what we call our local chapters, so to speak, taking similar-minded individuals and putting them in one space. Think of the things that can be done or talked about that can really bring a change to the individuals. Because when we leave that space at the end of our meetings every month, we bring that into our families, we bring those to our friends and to our local communities. And so I really think like a lot of our individuals really shape the world around in which they live. And I've seen that in vocations, I've seen that through local community memberships. I've seen that through our own senior leadership within the organization. And they really come from all walks of life. There's no required occupation. We have individuals from being plow drivers to dentists to professional workers, lawyers. It doesn't matter. And I think that's one of the great things about Freemasonry is that it attracts people from all walks of life and brings them into one place. So
the term masonry, I think of someone who works with stone. Is that part of the history of the name?
yes. So Masonic lodges originate from, in our documented sense, we go back to the 1300s and we have the stone guilds of Europe building the great cathedrals and edifices of stone, created some very beautiful things. But eventually modern building techniques approached, and that skill set really wasn't as prominent as it had been in years past. So those lessons that had existed in those Masonic lodges developed into the Masonry we know today. So we kind of do it symbolically in a different sense and kind of have that unifying thing, teaching moral lessons through those through that particular world, so to speak. And now the term free is also a little different as well, because it defines one of those things where back in the day, Masonic lodges were accepting people who had free labor, who are not servants of others, so to speak. So it's also much more broad than that. But again, connecting the two words developed into Freemasonry today, as we know it from the 1700s on.
The symbol that most of us recognize with
the square and compass.
Okay. Is there anything that you are able to share about that?
That is the universal symbol of Freemasonry. Certainly that is explored more in as you venture down and journey into Freemasonry a little bit, but you'll find that symbol on many cars and many buildings across the world. And especially from those Masons that I've seen here, they celebrate that as a unifying symbol and an instant connection with somebody that you might have never met, but have the similar experiences as you do. So it really is just like, I call it the bat symbol from Batman of Freemason. Kind of just shows, right?
Understood. You talked about earlier, you and I had a chance to chat about what we wanted to share with viewers. And you said that your organization, is it okay to call it an organization? I mean, it's a fraternity, but
I call it a fraternity, I think, and it's
okay, I'll honor that and call it a fraternity, does not recruit.
We do not. And the simple reason for that is we are not so much interested in the numbers, which would certainly be great to have flourishing in such a way. And I'll say Freemasonry is stable and doing well, but we look more toward the qualities of the individual coming into the fraternity. And to be a Mason, you must ask one to join. And I think that's the greatest thing about learning about anything, is about finding about information about how I actually joined Freemasonry, is that very simple question: how do I join? And that's the first thing that you need to do. You can, if you don't know a Mason in your life, I met one when I was 20 years old in college, and then my brother joined the fraternity. So it made my connection a little bit easy to eventually petition and learn more from people who had actually done that. But say you don't have that. Your individual state should have a state website, which will be able to provide you maybe with like a general interest form or somebody to contact that would be able to connect you to your lodge. And for most people, it's usually attending dinners, getting to know the members, and it's not an instantaneous process. It can take several months before you actually petition and join your local lodge. It's an opportunity for you to get to know the lodge as well as for them to get to know you. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach as well. So, you might go to a couple of dinners at a local lodge and find that maybe you want to try something else, because each lodge has its own particular personality, so to speak. I certainly have found quite a few, having been able to travel to some around here up in Vermont, but I certainly have found one that truly feels like home for me, and that's where I decide to be a member.
So it's not exactly, if you live here, you must be a member of that lodge if you choose.
You do not need to be a member of a particular lodge, so to speak. You are required to typically living in a particular state to join a state lodge. So if you live in Connecticut, for example, you would join a lodge in Connecticut. Not so if you're living in Hartford, for example, or you're living in,
Burlington, Connecticut.
Depending on there, you could certainly, if you're willing to travel, back in the day, there were more lodges everywhere because people would be traveling not so far to go to their meetings. Now it's just broken down a little bit.
Yeah.
So
And not every city or town certainly has a lodge, but you should be able to find one in your state.
there'll definitely be a couple. There definitely be in your counties. There's many. You just have to find one, and your local state Grand Lodge will have a particular thing about that as well.
Okay, so someone says I'm interested. They approach someone who is Freemason. Are you able to say what the next steps are? Is it like written application, interview? What goes on?
So from my own experience here in Vermont, a person who is interested in Freemasonry would generally be welcome to attend some dinners, get the opportunity to know some members, and eventually they'd be welcomed, if everything had gone nicely, would be eventually offered a petition, which would be sponsored by a master mason of that lodge. For example, that's the third degree of masonry, and that's considered full membership. And eventually that would lead to a interview process, so to speak. And that process would then, over the next couple of months, get a more formal opportunity, soliciting what is your interest, learning a little bit about your past, what you are seeking from Freemasonry, and learning a little, again, having an opportunity for both sides to ask questions to eventually lead to a balloting on that. And
would there be something that might come up in the interview that would perhaps have someone or the group, whoever does the interviewing, say, it doesn't seem as if you are Freemason material, or there's something in your background that will prohibit you from being a Freemason?
well, the general qualifications of Freemasonry are generally of being of an adult age, and that can vary, but depending on your state, 18 or 21 are generally found as common, but I have heard as it being as high as 25. Of course, it is a fraternity, so it is a fraternity of men, and you also need to be of good moral character, as well as that belief in God. And when I mean of good moral character, of course, that's a very, some folks look at it being like, I had something when I was 20 but we look, have you reformed? What have you grown in your personal life? And how will Freemasonry help you even get better? And it certainly can. Just that association with others who are like-minded, as well as the information that you come across as well, can be very inspiring for personal development. And I feel that honesty is certainly expected and appreciated in that conversation, but a person has ulterior motives, or they're certainly not understanding what Freemasonry is and what will be expected of them as well, because there are expectations when you go through and you start learning. It's just like you're an apprentice learning for knowledge and trying to attend meetings and all that other stuff. That certainly is certainly explained in the process, and eventually leads to a ballot, which must be unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay. About how many people are usually in that process? Like how many people are in the interview and voting, if you want to call it the ballot process?
So committee typically consists of 3, which there will be a chairman, which is usually, not always, but usually a past master, which is a past leader of a Masonic lodge. And they'll kind of guide the conversation, or one who has been experienced with interviews before. I've participated in several. And it's about creating a comfortable and accommodating space where, conversation and dialogue can be had, and truly get to know. And usually it's not just one, it can be many. And it could take place in the lodge. It could take place at dinner, at somebody's home. It just trying to also understand what can impact on family, starting to get, as well as answering family members' questions, saying we have 1 meeting a month. Sometimes it might be a little bit more. Freemasonry certainly does not dominate family life, but it certainly is a part. And certainly, like anything else in our personal lives, we have to balance it.
Right. And if someone has made poor choices, let's say in their teen years, it doesn't automatically mean they're excluded, especially if they have grown and learned and made
Of
better
course
choices
not.
now. Okay.
Everything is done on an individual basis.
No, I can answer the first half of my question. I was going to say other very well-known people that are Freemasons. That I can just simply say yes, because I've heard that. Who are some well-known Masons that now, is it a confidential thing that you can't tell anybody? Because obviously you know what it's okay to share and what is not okay to share. But I know people usually proudly say when
Uh,
they're a Freemason.
so I can answer this question first. So
Mine was a long question. Sorry, Devin.
uh, generally, membership is not prominently known. It is up to the individual if they want to announce their membership publicly. I certainly celebrate that I am a Freemason. I really love being a Freemason, but it is several well-known individuals I can talk about in the United States have been Freemasons. Many of our founding fathers, including George Washington. You have Benjamin Franklin, famous Freemasons, both of them Grand Masters of their respective jurisdictions. In the 20th century, you have Harry Truman, President of the United States. And a story I liked about him, he spoke very fondly about the differences and his desire to be Grand Master of Masons of Missouri versus President of the United States. So, which was the higher honor for him. And a man I respect greatly. Teddy Roosevelt, another president of the United States. Heard stories about him being in lodge when he was president, and his gardener was the master of the lodge. Talk about a really interesting dichotomy and a duo of power. So, yeah, those are just a few. George Washington, a very famous and influential Freemason, and you'll find his painting typically in most Masonic lodges because he led a very virtuous and moral life, first in the hearts of his countrymen. So John Wayne, another famous, many people in Hollywood have certainly been involved in Freemasonry. It just, many of them celebrate what the fraternity was to them. And not all of them had, were so illustrious with stuff and positions, but they lived a life of moral conduct. And certainly it shows to who they were and the impact that they made around them.
Okay. In more recent years, are there any, and only those people that freely share that they're Freemasons, anyone in more recent years? So everyone you've named is no longer alive, Devin, just saying.
Oh, I know. Where we get into
not the confidentiality, we're not looking to breach that, but
one of the more prominent British royals, Prince Michael of Kent, is the Grand Master of Masons of the United Grand Lodge of England, I believe. He is one of the more prominent Masons around the world. But there are several Hollywood stars. I don't really follow popular media after 1990. So I do know of several, but I really don't want to speak too much on that. You can certainly Google it.
Okay. Now, is the Grand Master role or position for life, for a certain period of time? Does it vary?
It varies. It's usually based with custom. So here in Vermont, we hold annual elections at our Grand Lodge session, and the Grand Lodge is a state Masonic organization. There really is no international or national body of Freemasonry. In the United States, each state is sovereign to itself. So Vermont and New York, recognize one another, for example, but they're not necessarily dependent on each other. The Grand Master in itself is the elected representative to supervise the fraternity of his jurisdiction for approximately one calendar year. And then the next year, there'd be another election. And so here in Vermont, typically a Grand Master will serve for 2 one-year terms. And they're usually selected by their eventual future grandmaster will, or a previous grandmaster, I should say, will have selected them, and they would have moved up over time in subsequent offices with greater responsibility, leading to their own tenure, and they start the process all over. It works much the same at a local level, where the individual lodge has much the same. So locally, I belong to a Masonic lodge, and I went through the degrees of Freemasonry, which there are 3, and became eventually appointed to the line of officers and moved up through the chairs, as we like to call it, culminating in me becoming worshipful master of my lodge. And I have served 5 terms as worshipful master. So, and I also highlight on that term worshipful. It is not one who is worshipped. It is kind of, you have to look at the synonym and the root of the word, and it evolves from Old English as being one worthy of respect.
Okay.
So,
Well, I cannot believe we are out of time, but you had a statement that you made early on when you and I were chatting pre-recording, and the word secret. People always go, it's secret. You can't say anything. It's secret. I'm going to ask you to sum up our show. And I do want to thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom and experience, and thank our viewers for joining us. And what wonderful, wise statement did you make about secrecy?
so many think that Freemasonry is filled with secrecy. There is pretty much, I can talk about many things. It is not a secret society. If it was a secret society, you wouldn't know that we exist. We are a society with secrets. And those secrets are, just between members. And I think the greatest thing is about finding it for yourself and feeling you have earned different things in which to learn and grow as well. And it kind of moves into my last bit. And I would like, again, to thank I'd take the opportunity to thank everybody watching this as well. And to share my own personal experiences here, that this is a community. And as I've really referenced earlier, community is a very important thing, and especially to me as well, that we take the time to find that particular thing, whether it is Freemasonry or whether it is something else. Find a pursuit of passion for yourself that draws in that community and makes you feel whole, and that you're contributing to something greater than yourself. Because we are not just individuals, we are stronger as a group, and we can truly make an impact when we're doing something for our local communities, and not just our towns. Communities are so many complex groups that we can just create ourselves.
Okay. Wonderful way to end. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, viewers. We'll catch you next time.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models, from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.